So how many of you have taken a computer science course? That's quite a number of hands. So I have a confession to make. I've never taken a computer science course. I don't know how to code. I was never even interested in business until I started my first software company. In fact, I was a high school teacher before I invented a billion-dollar software product. A student once came up to me and said, "Mr. Yueh, don't you think it's strange for a teacher to run off and pursue a dream career?" So today I'm going to talk about how easy you can change your life and an industry with just a simple idea. For me, everything always began with a simple idea. And it's really important to understand why simple ideas have the power to change the world today. Let's go back in time for a moment to understand why it's so important to pursue the tech dream and to drive innovation across all sectors of the world. In the 18th century, Adam Smith described the invisible hand, where self-interested actions in a free market economy benefit all of society. Today, however, we have the digital hand. It's a bit more sinister. The digital hand automates away the jobs of the many while concentrating wealth in the hands of the few. And that really creates a problem for the entire world. Did you know that the top 10 tech billionaires are worth more than half the world's population? And the digital divide is getting wider every day. Dreams of white picket fences have been replaced with fears of artificial intelligence and robots automating away all of our jobs. Industry barriers to entry are collapsing all around us. The world is changing very quickly. And the world is increasingly divided between haves and have-nots, tech creators and tech consumers. But there's a really great silver lining. Anyone can be a tech creator today. So why are so few people pursuing the tech dream if anyone can be a tech creator? How many of you have read Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell? So Gladwell describes the 10,000-hour rule. In his book, he talks about the seminal birth year, 1955, when several of the biggest tech titans in the world today, including Bill Gates and Steve Jobs and the like, were all born. They had just enough years to gather all their expertise before the PC revolution took off, so they were primed with experience to plant their flag in the PC revolution. And he's explaining with that anecdote why you have to be at the right time and have the right duration of experience before you can actually drive really great innovation and make changes in the world. So first, we have to stop believing in these self-limiting narratives. These narratives are very destructive, and they're not true, they're not accurate. In reality, it only took me 500 hours before I invented my first software product. I can still remember the day when the Idea Toaster popped. I was 24, I didn't know what I wanted to do in life. I had zero credibility and zero background in technology. All of you have far more understanding of technology. You know how to manage people. I had zero, nothing. But I was sitting in a coffee shop in sunny Southern California. It was a Diedrich's coffee shop, and it's actually been replaced by Starbucks now. And it was a beautiful sunny day, and suddenly all of my ideas in the related space that I was researching came together in a moment of clarity. Back in 1999, companies all used to back up the same data over and over again onto tapes. But TiVo and MP3 players were already moving data from tapes onto disk and radically improving the user experience. So my pretty simple idea was to move enterprise tape backups onto disk. And that idea completely changed my life. And it ended up disrupting a $5 billion industry. It's hard for me to believe, even today, how easy it was to go from idea into building a great company. You can be a nobody with no background in tech, and the thing I really love about America is you can have zero background but a great idea, walk into the offices of 5 of the top 10 VCs in the world, and they will literally give you $8 million to run off and start your software company. That's how it all began for me. What the world needs to know is how easy it can be to disrupt an industry, which is why legacy barriers to industry are crumbling so fast. And it's getting easier all the time. One of the reasons why it's getting so easy is a phenomenon that I call FnTech, and anyone can take advantage of it. It all started in the early 90s with the internet and the invention of the World Wide Web. These created a fulcrum for the lever arm of technology. Around the same time, Linus Torvald made a major contribution to the lever arm when he released his free open source operating system, Linux. Then, in the mid-2000s, they released Git, which helped the world of open source developers more easily share and access their free software. You see, you don't have to code software. You don't need to know how to code software if it's already been coded for you. Both of my software companies, Avamar and Delphix, would have been impossible without enormous foundations of open source. It's like stealing candy from babies, but it's free and it's legal. And let's take a look at what else has really helped build up the lever arm. Around the same time as Git, Amazon invented the cloud, Apple released the iPhone, Google soon followed with Android. These became mega platforms with billions of users. So today, you don't need to buy and manage fields of servers and build the technology to work across all those servers. You can get just what you need in the cloud. You don't have to scale a platform to support billions of users. Just launch an app in an app store. And let's take a look at the most advanced software in the world today: artificial intelligence, machine learning, and deep learning. All of these are available as services in the cloud. In other words, the highest tech created by the world's smartest engineers has already been commoditized, and you can use it to build any app you want. Pretty great, right? I'm picturing Oprah. There's an AI service for you, and for you, and for you. You really can't take advantage of all of these technology building blocks, collect them all, and assemble them into your own product for free. It's why the idea for a product is the only thing that really matters. The idea, the what that you define, can change your life, can change your industry, and it can make a difference in the world today. Now, many of you in the audience, you might be thinking, it takes a lot more than an idea to build a tech giant. How long do you think it took Mark Zuckerberg to code up Facebook? Any guesses? 1 week. One coder in college alone. That's all it took to launch an incredible app that upended the world and waste time for people all over the world. Well, what about everything else Mark Zuckerberg had to learn to build his company? Zuckerberg didn't know how to build companies. He didn't know how to manage people. You all manage teams way bigger than he ever even thought of managing. He didn't know how to raise venture capital financing. But a great product idea can trigger an avalanche of resources to help you build and scale your company, so you don't need to know everything all at once. After Facebook went viral, Sean Parker, the founder of Napster, came to Zuckerberg and said he wanted in. So Parker brought all of his experiences, learned by illegally pirating music, of course. But he also brought his network from Silicon Valley. So together, they negotiated their first outside investment from Peter Thiel, the co-founder and CEO of PayPal. Thiel, of course, brought his much bigger network and his lessons learned scaling PayPal, including his singular focus for his company's employees to do one thing really well. And that one thing for Facebook was growth by number of users. And wow, have they grown. Like a weed hell-bent on destroying democracy. When we look at the scale and complexity of Facebook today, it clouds our memory of where it began, creating this illusion of unattainability. But it's just the Avalanche Effect. It all started with a really simple idea. And great product ideas are more mundane than most people think. So let's take a look at the start of some of the biggest tech companies today. Two men are standing on a street corner in Paris. It's cold. They're having a hard time hailing a cab. Uber is born. Two friends move from New York to San Francisco. They're jobless. They're having a hard time paying for rent. A big conference comes to town, booking up all of the hotel rooms. They get this bright idea to buy a couple airbeds and rent them out online. And Airbnb is born. Two fraternity brothers are talking. One says to the other, "I wish these questionable photos I'm sending to a girl would automatically disappear." There's another name for those photos I won't use here. And shame on you if you've ever sent one. The other fraternity brother turns to the first and says, "That's $1 million idea." But Evan Spiegel was really wrong about that. It was a deca-billion-dollar idea. And that's how Stapp was born. These are surprisingly mundane, ordinary ideas, just like mine, a pretty simple idea, but they changed the entrepreneurs' lives, and when they were embodied in an application, they eventually made a difference in the world. That's how easily all of it can get started. And so you might be wondering, well, how can we apply this to our companies? How can we apply these simple, ordinary concepts to transforming our organizations and maintaining our place in the market today? Well, there's a great place where you can see how repeatable innovation can be. It's Silicon Valley. And it contradicts most of the big lessons learned from the big books in business and technology today, which I'll go through. When I started my second software company, Delphix, I decided to move to Silicon Valley to see what it was all about. Within a 15-mile radius of our headquarters, we had 6 of the top 10 technology companies in the world. That's a lot of success in a really small area. And there's a reason for all of that repeated success. There's something in the water. No, there's not something in the water. There's really just these lessons that keep floating through Silicon Valley and driving great decision-making in entrepreneurs. To make the point even more extreme, you've probably heard of the PayPal Mafia. The early employees at PayPal went on to build an incredible string of successes, including LinkedIn, YouTube, Yelp, and Yammer. That's not even including the serial entrepreneurs like Elon Musk, who built SpaceX, Tesla, SolarCity, and The Boring Company. If it came down to luck, the string of successes in Silicon Valley and PayPal would be the meteorological equivalent of lightning striking the same place 100 times in succession. It's not about luck. There really are lessons learned that increase your chances of success. So the question that I pose to you today is, do you have your what? Will your top transformation program, your best program from your organization, will it define and win the future of your industry? What I see instead when I work with many of the world's biggest companies is that they're chasing what I call the usual suspects. So at Delphix, we deliver data 1,000 times faster for many of the world's biggest companies for all their enterprise apps into their dev and test environments or analytics environments. And as a result, we work with companies like Apple and Wells Fargo and Facebook and the like. So we work with them on their transformation programs. When I ask companies, what are your top transformation programs, I usually get 1 or 2 or 3 of these. Maybe it's agile or lean, or maybe we've got some chat bots, maybe we've got AI services. Oh, we're focused on UXD, we've got this awesome UXD lab to show you. Often it's just kabuki theater. These are just tools and processes. They are the how, they are not the what. One of the big programs that people talk about is we're going to drive lean. This is what was driven at GE, even all the way up at the top with their CEO, with their outgoing CEO. They really embrace lean. Now, lean has a lot of problems. There's a lot in the book that everybody can benefit from. Most of it is just the common sense stuff that everybody's doing today. They're running agile programs, they're doing CI/CD. The real heart of lean that triggered this kind of lean startup movement is all about iterating quickly. It's build, measure, learn. It's pivoting when you can't find real success with a product that you've defined. And so a lot of companies believe, let's put lean into all of our programs throughout the organization, and maybe innovation will happen. That's not how innovation happens in Silicon Valley. It's not by having a whole bunch of little teams iterating and pivoting. It comes down to a great idea, often with 1 or 2 or 3 individuals, and they build that app, and it is the right app. It's not the app that they keep pivoting and iterating through. The problem with lean there are a lot of problems with lean and the iterate pivot strategy is trial and error isn't a strategy. You have to hold your product concepts to a much higher standard. Otherwise, if you start in the wrong place, you're stuck with these anchor effects, and you can't easily move away from them. If you sit down and you go through all of your product ideas with customers, well, inevitably, you have this small sample bias. You present things a certain way, you can only reach a certain number of customers. The customers that are most influential may or may not represent the entire market. And the really big problem with the lean startup method, and lean in general, is survivorship bias. If you talk to the winners out of a whole bunch of different companies or projects, some of them will say, maybe 2 or 3 of them will say, yes, we iterated and pivoted and we won. But that's not why they were successful. The other 99 all died iterating and pivoting. You want much higher probabilities of success. You need to implement the right kinds of frameworks to build the right kind of products that will survive in the market today. And so I generally believe that what you need to do is focus on the disciplined mindset of the successful entrepreneur. You want to iterate and pivot and evolve your ideas when they're in your head before you enact a team to prosecute those ideas. At that point, it's expensive. You've got anchor effects. It's hard to change people's minds and redirect development resources left and right. It's very expensive to do that. So you really want to put the emphasis on defining the right what. Good to Great is another book I like to pick on. It's another book that I've learned quite a lot from, actually. And one of the big lessons from Jim Collins that he talks about whenever he's speaking is the who before what. Get the right people on the bus. And many leaders across the world live and die that way. But Silicon Valley doesn't work that way at all. It's not the who before the what. The what defines the who. Look at Mark Zuckerberg. So he builds Facebook. He's surrounded with controversy. He didn't even come up with his idea. He stole it from the Winklevoss twins. His first app that he built at Harvard, FaceMash, was something like Tinder, and he almost got kicked out for releasing it and bringing down the network. The who had lots of question marks. Kid in college, never managed a team, never managed a development program. There is no who that you can take a look at and have certainty around. But the what, that app that he launched, when it went viral and 80% of Harvard students loaded in almost overnight, that was enough. That's how Silicon Valley picks its winners. It picks it by the what, not by the who. And of course, we've got the level 5 leader, the servant, humble-based leader who builds a clockwork, does not tell time, builds a clockwork where the team and the strategies working in unison can drive the flywheel and dominate categories. Unfortunately, the high-friction world of flywheels is receding into our past. The internet is a much more zero-gravity place. And as a result, these kind of strategies don't work as well. Let's just take a look at who's winning in the world today. Who are the leaders that are really dominating markets today? You have quite a number of these guys that we all recognize. You have Steve Jobs and Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk and the like. None of them are level 5 leaders. They are all deeply flawed individuals. Most of them tell time all the time, very specifically. They don't just build teams to build their products, they define their products. Jeff Bezos is infamous for micromanaging every pixel of the Amazon.com website. Elon Musk says he spends 80% of his time, 80%, on engineering and products. And yet, if you talk to the CEOs of the world today, or even the CIOs and CTOs of the world today, and you ask them how much of your time do you spend defining products, requirements, technologies, user experience, it's down in the percentage points or none at all, no time at all. And so it's not just about being a product CEO. You have to know what are the elements that make up a product CEO, and I call it the Product Trinity. These anti-leaders are all masters of the Product Trinity. Oop. And it didn't show up, but inside the circles, it's supposed to say product manager, So they're product managers, they're de facto CTOs, they define the technology, and they're the heads of user experience design. You have to have command of the requirements, of the technologies, of the user experience. If the leaders of the world's biggest companies by market cap, and they're all tech companies now, can spend 80% of their time on products, how can the world's leaders of other organizations afford to spend almost none? The Innovators Dilemma, another book that I read a long time ago. And when I read it after I'd built my first multi-billion-dollar software product, I thought, this doesn't resonate with me at all. And after I talked to a whole bunch of founders who'd built successful companies, multi-billion-dollar software products, it didn't resonate with them at all either. The Innovators Dilemma talks about one narrow branch of innovation and disruption. One narrow branch, an entire tree of disruption and innovation that we live within today. And so what he talks about is bottom-up disruption, where you have a new entrant, they target a niche at the bottom of the market with a simpler solution, they add features and customers as they dominate the niche and eventually move up market to displace the incumbent. And yes, that has happened many times. That is a real method by which disruption occurs. But it's hardly all of the methods that are out there. For instance, when Amazon decided to buy Whole Foods and the entire grocery store market collapsed in market cap, and Amazon's market cap went up so much that they could have paid, that it paid for the value of Whole Foods almost for free. That wasn't bottom-up disruption. Bezos just bought his way materially into an industry by taking out a major player in the market. He just gobbled up number 8, number 10, number 13 in the market. And the big tech companies can do it at will. They have so much cash at their disposal. They can just do it at will. There are lots of avenues that you have to be wary of for disruption. I catalog a lot of them in my book, Disrupt or Die. One of them is what I call over the top. It's superior design. Steve Jobs really taught the world an incredible lesson about user experience and superior products. When he released the iPod, there were a ton of MP3 players out there. They were all feature-rich. You would think there's very little room for differentiation. And yet he released the iPod, and it dominated the market. He didn't go after the bottom of the market. He didn't go after the underserved niche. He went after the premium segment, the top of the market right out of the gates. And they were so successful that he repeated it with the iPad and the iPhone and all the versions of the iPhone, and then with the Macs. They go out and dominate the top of the pyramid and then parachute down the market. Now Google, having read The Innovator's Dilemma, decided, let's try and bottom-up disrupt the iPhone. So they released Android. They gave it away for free. They tried to create platform around it. They make pennies on the dollar for it, and they failed to disrupt Apple. Apple became the world's biggest money-making machine. So the bottom-up model didn't work. And yet companies, when they think about innovation disruption, they all read Clayton Christensen's book, and they worry about bottom-up disruption. It's just one branch, just one method by which the world is getting disrupted today, and not the most powerful one. There are a lot of companies that have followed Steve Jobs, the Teslas of the world, the Nests of the world. They are not bottom-up disruptors. They win with superior products. Another thing that the Innovator's Dilemma and the Innovator's Solution talks about is, well, if you can't innovate because you're in a big corporation and small programs, you've got to deal with, quarterly earnings and operating margins. Let's create a separate organization where we can start the innovation. Let's disrupt ourselves with a separate organization, what I call the Sidecar Method. Let's create a little entity, and maybe we'll spend a little bit of time on it, and let's put a couple smart men and women in there, and let's see if they can build something innovative. But that's not how Silicon Valley innovates. We don't create a sidecar. In Silicon Valley, the program is right at the top. It's like what Steve Jobs did with the iPhone. He didn't care about cannibalizing the iPod revenue, Mac revenue, any kind of revenue, iPad revenue. They put the program right at the top and center of the organization. It gets all the resources it wants. It gets all the attention of the CEO. And when they release it, because it is the most important thing for the company, it dominates the market. How can you expect your top innovation program to win if it's not even win the future of your industry, if it's not even the most important thing to your CEO? The answer is you can't. There's another book. This one's not quite as much of a classic and is a little bit more recent. Simon Sinek talks about start with why. So how many of you have seen his TED Talk? Okay. Or read his book. I recently gave a TED Talk that'll come out in a little bit. It's got half of this presentation in it. He starts with why. He says, you really want to focus on why. Companies like Apple, they're not out there selling you the what. They're not selling you speeds and feeds and devices. They're talking about people who think differently, the innovators, the crazy ones. That's the why, right? They talk about something that you can really connect with emotionally. And then they talk about the how, their own innovative processes, their attention to detail, their care about even the way the insides of their devices look. And then they finally get to the what. It's an iPod or it's an iPhone with this many bells and these bells and whistles. He's confusing marketing with product creation. He's confusing marketing with innovation. You can't start with why. You have to start with what. You can't say, my why is I want to save mankind from itself, unless I'm building rocket ships to Mars like Elon Musk. The what limits the why. The what defines what's possible with the why. The way Silicon Valley works is you start with the what. What is the product that you've envisioned, the solution that you've envisioned that can dominate or take power over an industry? And then from that what, let's find the biggest why. Let's find the biggest vision that people can emotionally connect with. And we'll use that vision to collect the who. That vision is how we create a culture of impassioned zealots hell-bent on taking our vision and turning it into something that can consume an industry, that will come to life. You start with what? You don't start with a why. There's no way to start with a why. Another big problem I hear from many of our customers at Delphix is we can't change because of our culture. We have 30,000 employees who were all hired doing jobs from another era. They don't know how to pivot to what is new in the world. They don't use the new tools. They don't code in the modern languages. But guess what? I still don't know how to code. I didn't know anything about technology when I started. And it's what I call the scale fallacy. Big companies, because of their size, because they look at all the employees they have on their balance sheet, they try to manage the scale of their operations. They try and manage the body of their organizations. That's not how innovation happens. Innovation happens from a great idea and a small team that paints a compelling vision, and that vision creates this cascading effect. Don't bother to try and manage the culture at scale to innovate. Just go find your what. So now let's step back and talk about the world again, just briefly. Facebook. One of the big interesting things about the world today is the big tech companies, they're so big, they actually are starting to achieve the exact opposite of their intended goals, polar unintended consequences. Facebook wants to bring the world closer together, build a social network to bring people together. Instead, they create these filter bubbles and this platform that Russia can take advantage of, and they're destroying society, ripping a society apart. They achieve the exact opposite of what they're trying to achieve. If big tech companies can accidentally disrupt democracy, what will technology do to your companies today? It's time to disrupt or die. Thank you.